Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Tuesday, April 13th, 2021. On today's episode of the show, we're going to be talking about the latest film and TV news. My name is Ben Pearson. I'm the senior writer at slashfilm.com, and I'm joined on today's episode by Slash Film editor in chief Peter Sciretta,
Hey, everyone.
managing editor Jacob Hall,
Hello, hello.
and writer Hoai-Tran Bui.
Hey, everyone.
Peter, it was really weird to introduce you in this way.
I know. I was like, oh no. When you were saying my name, I was like, what do I say?
You took mine.
Yeah, I stole HT.
It sounds really redundant, like almost twice in a row.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the spot. I was like, I've never been put in this spot before. I think even like when we've done the things that Jacob like the group things, like the writers' rooms, like I've always been the person who introduces it. So this is strange. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, Peter, we had you on, or I wanted to have you on because of our first news story here. So HT, maybe you can lay the groundwork for us a little bit. Some news broke last night that ArcLight Cinemas and Pacific Theaters will be closing permanently. So tell us what happened here.
Yeah, the parent company for ArcLight Cinemas and Pacific Theaters, Decurion, has announced that they will shutter their two theater brands in the wake of just the financial toll brought on by the coronavirus pandemic. They're shutting them permanently after closing their doors more than a year ago today, and it's something that they didn't want, and they exhausted all the potential options, but the company feels they don't have a viable way forward. And it's a theater. These are two theater brands that I am not all familiar with, but I do know, especially after the outpouring of grief for the shutterings of these two theaters, especially the Hollywood ArcLight, which houses the Cinerama Dome, that I know that this is a very big deal. So Ben and Peter, why don't you take the reins on this, because I know that you guys probably have actually been to these theaters.
Yeah, the Hollywood ArcLight was one of the primary places where they did press screenings in LA. So I saw, basically everything that wasn't a huge Disney movie that didn't have screenings on the Disney lot, I saw pretty much there. I mean, there were a handful of other theaters, but this was like, I would say, the main sort of primary one. So I have so many memories of seeing so many great movies at this, especially the ArcLight Hollywood location. But Peter, you've lived in LA for a long time. I'm no longer living there. I'm sure this must have hit you pretty hard as well. So if you want to just, what's your reaction? Maybe share a couple highlights of ArcLight experiences that you've had, and then maybe, speculate about what you think might happen here.
Yeah. When I first moved here, like, before I moved here, I came out to LA to kind of experience it. And ArcLight was a big part of that because ArcLight felt like the film geeks, Cineplex. It really felt like everybody working there on their name tags below their names, it had their favorite movie. It felt like they cared about projection. They had people that came out before each movie and introduced it and told you that, that they would stand by the side for the first, 5-10 minutes of the show in case to make sure the projection and sound is up to the ArcLight standards. And the Cinerama Dome, which is historical and I've always felt didn't have the best sound or projection, but whatever. To me, ArcLight was always the LA theater, even more so than the New Beverly, because New Beverly, which Quentin Tarantino owns, is always showing like older movies. And I'm all most of the time when I'm watching older movies, I'm fine just watching it at home on my projection screen. But going when I first moved here to LA, they were one of the first theaters to have uh, you know, uh, you could pick your own seats. You didn't have to show up to the theater, an hour early to get good seats. And every time you were there, I would always like see celebrity. It was a place where filmmakers and celebrities would go to see the movies. And I don't know, it's really it. Pacific theaters, I don't think as much. Like that brand wasn't as big of a thing, even though that's the theater at the Grove, and there's a bunch of them around here. But the ArcLight really felt like something special, and I'm really hoping that someone can like maybe at least buy up that part of the chain and let it live on in some way. Or I'm sure. What do you think's going to happen here, Ben? Do you think another chain will come and I don't know, AMC, do they even have the money to swoop in and purchase this? Or
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the pandemic has obviously put everybody in such a dire financial position that it seems like nobody is like perfectly positioned to be able to swoop in, and no other theater chain anyway is able to swoop in right now and just like, be the savior of this beloved LA landmark. So with that in mind, my sort of twisted broken brain almost immediately went to, oh my god, I kind of am wondering if like Disney or somebody is going to buy this. And maybe not the
Netflix or Amazon?
yeah, maybe, and it's possible that they wouldn't even buy the ArcLight Cinemas in terms of like the company, or like the theater itself that is like right next to the Cinerama Dome. But I can totally see the idea of a company like that buying just the Cinerama Dome because of the standing it has as the sort of icon of the LA community, the LA film community, the historical relevance that it has as like the home of all these premieres and stuff that have happened there over the years. So what do you think about that, Peter? Do you think a company like that could swoop in and, if not buying up the entire chain, then just like that location for special events and whatever?
I don't know, because, Disney already owns a theater really nearby within, walking distance of the El Capitan. So I'm not sure if there's a benefit to them. And also, like, I'm not sure if there's a benefit for a company like Netflix or Amazon, because are they really going to have that many movies to showcase? Like, how many screens is the ArcLight? It's at least a dozen, if not
Yeah,
like
something like
20,
that.
something like that.
15, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I really don't know. I'm worried about this. This was the kind of place, if you were in LA and you saw something on opening night, there was a chance that a star or the filmmaker would just show up and introduce and do an impromptu Q&A. Like, you never knew what was going to happen. And I don't know, it just felt like a really special place.
Yeah, I'm really bummed about this. And I know that it's probably hard for people who aren't in Los Angeles to really care about this that much, because the ArcLight brand, and from what I know of the Pacific Theater brand, it was not like a huge nationwide thing to the point where it rivaled AMC or anything like that. But like if you are in LA and you care about movies, like the ArcLight is sort of a home away from home for a lot of people. So it's definitely a huge deal for people in the industry. So yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. Yeah, I'm very, very curious to see if somebody's is financially able at this point to sort of swoop in and make a play for this. So let's move to our next item, which is Indiana Jones 5. There was some really interesting casting news over, I think this actually happened on Friday. And that is that Phoebe Waller-Bridge, the creator and star of Fleabag, has joined the cast as the female lead of Indiana Jones 5, which still does not have an official title. And John Williams is coming back to score the movie. So Harrison Ford is coming back to play Indiana Jones, and James Mangold is writing and directing the movie. That's kind of all we know about it right now. But I just wanted to sort of go around the room and take your temperature on this and see what you guys think about this. So, HT, let's start with you. What do you think of? I know you're a big Fleabag fan, especially. What do you think about Phoebe Waller-Bridge joining up in Indy 5?
I hope that she gets to wield the whip and the fedora, because good for her. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is such a talent, and I'm excited that she's getting bigger and bigger with every project that she signs on to. And I wonder if she'll be able to or if she will be asked to write at all on this project, because she's as known for being a exceptionally talented writer as she is being an actress. So, and I think it's rare that she doesn't do punch ups or something that she's involved in, except for maybe Solo. So I guess if Indy is as big as a blockbuster as Solo, she probably won't be able to get on the creative side of things either. But I just wish the best for her. I am not. I've watched all the indie movies now. I did a podcast with Chris Evangelista on it, and Crystal Skull is not. It shouldn't be as hated as it is. It shouldn't have the reputation it has. But I do think that the indie franchise is kind of winding down now, and I wonder if this is supposed to be a passing of the torch kind of thing. And if it is, I'm very happy that Phoebe Waller-Bridge would get that torched if she does, as I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. Jacob, what do you think?
I mean, I have nothing else to add on HD. She's great. This is her second time with a Lucasfilm project after she walked away with her few scenes in Solo. And yeah, I would love, love if this movie was an excuse to put Phoebe Waller-Bridge in a fedora and a leather coat, for the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and doing adventures in a post Indiana Jones, century. Because when you think about it, it is increasingly as far from the 70s, which is when this movie will take place, as Raiders of the Lost Ark was from the 30s when that movie was made. So it's time for a new round of period pieces with that 50-year gap, if you ask me. And I would love for her to be the whip-cracking tour guide in it.
All right, Peter, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd love. First of all, I'd love to see if she does some punch ups on the script because I'm guessing they're not going to give her a major rewrite or something like that because of Mangold. But if she definitely has that voice that I don't know, it elevates the stuff that she does, and she also has that look. She has like a very I don't know. Maybe it's because she does some of this, but she has like a look of like she can fit in a vintage time period. So I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious. Are they going to? Is this going to be a passing of the torch, like they were trying to do with Shia LaBeouf? Are they going to try to do that here to a greater extent with her? And will the fan bros be upset?
Yeah, that's my question. Is I don't know if it's a passing of the torch or if this is sort of like a Kate Blanchett in Crystal Skull scenario where she's going to be, like the main villain or foil or
Oh
something
yeah,
for Indiana Jones, which I think would be equally exciting. And I would, also be happy if they, just officially like ended this franchise or this run of this franchise, with Harrison Ford just like keeping the fedora and the whip or whatever, and then just like bring this to a close, and then in 5 years or 3 years or whatever, just like launching, essentially rebooting it and or telling another story in a different corner of that universe or something like that. So I'm curious if like Harrison Ford, he's going to be what 80 years old or something by the time this comes out, and he's like, it seems like he has not been thrilled about the idea of those rumors of like Chris Pratt taking over for Indiana Jones, which have been largely unfounded or entirely unfounded, actually. So I wonder if he has any say in this in terms of like, I would rather go out on my own terms instead of actually passing this thing off, kind of thing. So yeah, curious to see how that plays out as well. So let's get into some Disney news. Peter, another reason that we wanted to have you on is because of this story involving the future of Disney parks. So Jacob, you're obviously a theme park aficionado as well. So maybe run through a couple of these new updates from what we can expect from Disney parks in the future.
Yeah, Disney Parks chairman Josh D'Amaro did a series of interviews and a online press conference about the future of Disney parks in the post-pandemic world. And speaking with CNN Business, I'm going to read this quote about Disney World at its 50th anniversary. It's going to be fresh. It's going to be technology ridden. It's going to be incredibly relevant to guests all around the world. And he goes on to explain that there will be more integration of Disney Plus into Disney parks, presumably his way of laying the groundwork for characters from The Mandalorian and other Disney Plus shows maybe start popping up in Disney parks. He also describes the creation of a metaverse, which would be a way for via your phone and Disney apps to interact with Disney parks, essentially play games and interact with the parks in a digital interface as well as a physical one. And the biggest news coming out of this was at this press conference. Like I said, it was a limited audience. We have not seen this personally, but supposedly at the end, he reaches into a box, pulls out a prop lightsaber, and activates it, and apparently looks like a lightsaber. And this lines up with a patent that Disney filed a few years back for a, quote, sword device with a retractable, internally illuminated blade, which clearly is their attempt to create a prop lightsaber that looks legit in person and lines up with stories of the upcoming Star Wars hotel having a lightsaber experience inside. So a lot to take from here. The lightsaber thing is really neat, and it suggests that they're really pushing what theme park tech can be. But I will say this much, as somebody who likes Disney parks because I like a sense of place and like a sense of being somewhere that feels real and having my phone in my pocket. The idea of having my nose in my phone while exploring Disney park sounds reprehensible. And also, yes, I'm sure some people would love to see the Mandalorian characters and Disney Plus characters in the parks, but I miss the days when Disney parks created their own IP, to use that word, and were about their own things and stirred the imagination on their own without having to borrow characters we already knew. Peter, am I being too curmudgeonly about all of this?
I don't think you are. You know, Galaxy's Edge was kind of the first of this, like, I mean, it's not the first. They've been evolving this concept, but you can use your phone as a data pad and hack into certain things and go on missions. And there's a story that's being told basically on your phone, but in a almost an augmented reality kind of sense. And I think it was their way of trying to do what Universal has done with the wands in the Wizarding World, but it doesn't seem to connect with fans as much because people don't want to be on their phones. People, I guess maybe being on your phone while you're in the line in a queue for a ride, like, and being able to set off practical elements of, like, the ship turns on because you wired it correctly and stuff on your phone. That's cool. But for the most part, yeah, I agree with you, Jacob. I don't want to be on my phone, but the thing I want to talk about the most is this real working lightsaber because, yeah, he took the lightsaber out of the box, he turned it on, the blade came out, and from what I hear, because we weren't invited to this press conference, this was done in daylight, and people were saying that the blade looked like it does in the movies. And I'm not sure if you've seen these lightsabers that they sell, like the Legacy lightsabers or the Hasbro lightsabers that they sell. It looks cool at night, but in daylight, it just looks like a plastic blade with some a little bit of light illuminating out of it. So I'm wondering if they put visual effects on that. But he ended the presentation by igniting it and then saying it's real, and then cut to black, and everybody was freaking out. But I think everybody online was freaking out, like, oh, I'm gonna soon be able to buy one of these lightsabers. I think you hit it uh on the head here, Jacob, that it's probably going to be for that Star Wars Galactic Starliner experience. I don't think this is going to be a consumer product that you're going to be able to take home. I think,
Absolutely not. There's no
yeah.
way Disney can afford to mass manufacture these things if they are as real as he says they are.
Yeah, and also, even if it wasn't as real as he says it is, something that extends like that, like, it could poke some kids out or something. I don't see that happening. Like, them selling that and letting kids, like, poke each other with lightsaber blades that come out at a really fast speed.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. All right, so there's one more thing in here that I wanted to talk to you guys about, and Jacob, you mentioned it earlier, this idea of this metaverse, and you guys were talking about having your phones out the whole time. There's a quote here from Josh Tomorrow where he says, "It can bring Main Street alive in ways that you've never seen it before, never thought about before. You can have the whole theme park participate in a game that culminates in a celebration at the hub at the top of Main Street. The possibilities are endless." Blah 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 blah. Uh, how would something like that work? You guys know about theme parks. Like, if the entire park, like the reason that a park like that works is because it's so big and spread out and everybody is not in the same area at the same time. What is he talking about here? Do you guys have any sense of this?
I mean, I can imagine a really stupid mini game where it's like, Mickey needs help getting to the parade. Tap your phone to get Mickey to the parade, and enough people tap it. Oh, Mickey shows up on Main Street. That's kind of what I imagine in my head, because I don't understand how park ops makes this work. I mean, park operations, which is the idea of how many people are on rides, how many people are in queues, how many people are walking around,
Mhm.
how many bathrooms are available. Uh, I cannot imagine a world where you can make a satisfying digital game that does not destroy park ops entirely and render it
Well,
useless.
I have an idea for you here, Jacob, because I recently went to Alani in Hawaii, and they had this experience that's made for kids, but of course I had to try it. It's called the Menehune Adventure Trail, and you get this, like, little tablet device, like an iPad, and you go around solving mysteries, trying to find these artifacts that come to life as you answer things on the tablet. That's not important. The important part is I talked to a few other guests who were at Alani at the same time, and they told me that their adventures were completely different, a different series of how they got to different things. And it really makes me believe that they are probably creating experiences that, from a logistical standpoint, my logic nerd is actually making it, like, it sounds kind of cool, that they could be like, there's too many people in this area of the park. Let's get them over to Fantasyland because there's not people over there. So they could use these kind of games and apps to drive people around the park and make it a better experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're suggesting that this will be part of park ops. It'll be, oh crap, Frontierland is too crowded. Everybody who goes to Fantasyland gets a prize in their phone, a digital Disney sticker, and everybody then runs over to
Well,
Fantasyland.
not that obvious, but yes.
But yeah, okay, but let's strip it down to the nuts and bolts. That's what this would be. Because, and like I said earlier, this is not how I want a theme park. This is the exact opposite of how I theme park.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully I'm sure we'll be tracking this as we learn more in the coming, weeks and months. Let's move to our next item, which is a live action Gundam movie is in the works. HT, what do we know about this?
Yes, go go Gundam. That's not a quote from the show. I've never seen a Gundam show. Sorry, guys. But there is a Gundam live action movie coming to Netflix that's being developed by Legendary with Kong Skull Island director Jordan Vogt-Roberts directing and producing the movie based on the beloved mecha anime franchise. There are no other details yet, but Brian K. Vaughan is writing the screenplay and will also act as executive producer. Cale Boiter will oversee the project on behalf of Legendary and the original Gundam studio, Sunrise. There's also no set release date yet, but the movie will stream exclusively and globally on Netflix, except for China, where Legendary will distribute it.
Okay. So you just mentioned, actually, you've never seen any of these, but this is like a giant, I haven't seen any of these either, but just like basically for people like us, maybe who don't know anything about this, the basic gist of Gundam is what, like a Power Rangers-esque giant metallic thing that has like, little fighters inside of it. Like what's the deal here?
Yeah, they're giant robots that fight, and they are considered an institution of Japanese culture. There's been basically a Gundam series on the air in some form since the first debut of Mobile Suit Gundam in 1979. There is a Gundam statue in Tokyo, and it's a bunch of robots that fight.
Can I jump in here, Ben?
Yes, please do.
I've seen enough Gundam to be dangerous, and I know just enough to not know enough.
Okay.
But Gundam is, I guess, far more serious than Power Rangers. It's a show that was always targeted toward a slightly older audience, and I've read some of the. I've seen some of the Gundam shows, and I've read some of the Gundam mangas, specifically some of the earlier ones, and it is this interesting juxtaposition of a future world, a future galaxy of at war, where sides do pilot giant robots, but it's less Power Rangers and more gritty war story. It's all about how cool is it that these robots, these 50-foot, 100-foot tall robots, are battling each other in space, but also, man, war destroys communities and war is terrible. It's one of those combinations of futuristic sci-fi and anti-war storytelling. It's very much a more grim, more thoughtful thing than I think a lot of other Japanese mecha anime. And it's certainly not. I guess Power Rangers seems obvious from the outside, but before a Gundam fan sends us an email yelling at us for calling Power Rangers, it couldn't be more different than Power Rangers tonally. It's very, it wants to be a thoughtful look at war, which is why Brian K. Vaughan is such an interesting choice here, because he's a very thoughtful writer.
Yes, and I want to say that I'm not insulting Gundam in any way. I don't have a lot of interest in mecha animes, with the exception of maybe Neon Genesis Evangelion, but that's not really a mecha anime because it's about depression.
Yeah, I mean, I was the one who was probably going to bear the brunt of those by bringing up the Power Rangers comparison in the first place, so I apologize for that. But Peter, it sounded like you were going to jump in here. Do you have any sort of relationship with Gundam? It feels like this.
No.
Okay.
I was just going to say one thing, that Gundam was in I hate to bring this up. Sorry to remind you that this exists, but there was this movie from Steven Spielberg called Ready Player One, and Gundam played a big part in that movie. So.
Oh no. Yes, I do remember that. Now that you mention it, that was a sort of a key plot. There was a key plot moment that hung on the introduction of a Gundam character. So,
yeah.
Boy. Well, and in any event, Jordan Vogt-Roberts seems like an interesting choice for this, because he clearly has, this is very much in the wheelhouse of things that he has shown himself to be interested in. Like, he's very interested in Metal Gear Solid, and he's been attached to direct that movie for a long time too. So this is like, I feel like, in the same sort of, I don't know, genre family. Jacob, would you say something? It seems like they're cousins in a way, or at least they would attend the same parties.
Yeah, I'd say that. I think that Jordan Vogt-Roberts with, Kong Skull Island, a film loaded with Vietnam War imagery. I mean, there is, you can draw a direct line, I think, between what he found interesting about that script and that world compared to what I think a lot of people find interesting about Gundam. So it's a very, I think it's an interesting choice for this.
Okay. All right. So our last news item today involves a bunch of release date changes from Paramount, and I'm not going to bore you by droning on about what movie is going to come out on what day and what day it was previously set to come out on, because all of that stuff really just gets lost in audio form. But I will encourage you all to click on the link in the show notes and write down on your calendars, or set yourself an alert, or just pay attention, log this however way you want to, because there are some pretty significant moves here being made by Paramount in terms of release dates for movies like Top Gun Maverick and the next two Mission Impossible movies that I think film fans will certainly care about. So I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. And then really the reason that I put this on the docket for discussion here today is because I know that we have both HT and Jacob who co-host a podcast that loosely involves, I guess half involves talking about all things Star Trek. So there's a new Star Trek movie that has been titled or dated here for June 9th, 2023. And it's an untitled movie. And there are not really any official details about exactly what this film is going to be. But IO9 reports that this is not a movie that is going to be written by Star Trek Discovery scribe Kalinda Vazquez, which was announced not too long ago. It is a separate J.J. Abrams produced Trek film, but all detail beyond that remains top secret. So I just wanted to sort of open the floor to you guys, since you host a podcast about this, and see what your reaction is. And there have been several Star Trek movies that have been bandied about over the past couple years, and I'm just curious if you guys have a favorite here, like one that you would personally want to see, one that you think this is most likely to, actually slot into this release date. Go for it. Anybody.
My controversial opinion would be that Star Trek is doing fine on the small screen. In fact, it's doing so well for me. Controversially, it's a controversial statement because some people do not like Picard or Discovery like I do. But I think Star Trek needs a nice, long, big screen break. After Into Darkness was a critical failure and Beyond was a financial failure, I think Star Trek needs to rebuild its strong voice on CBS. Sorry, not CBS All Access, Paramount Plus now, and just live there for a bit and lick its wounds, which are mostly healed, and be TV for a bit, because Star Trek has always been better on TV, with a handful of exceptions.
And as for me, we are still making our way through the original series, so I know just a fragment of the entire Star Trek universe, Star Trek lore. But from what I've seen and what I've fallen in love with the original series, is that the J.J. Abrams movies were wildly not out of step, but wildly different approach to those characters in that universe than than they were at the beginning. So it's interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about Abrams taking on that again, even though he's just producing it. So I'm fine with something that is not in the Abrams universe, because I have seen Star Trek Into Darkness, which was terrible. I did like Star Trek Beyond better. So yeah, my thought is I'm down for another Star Trek movie, but I'm still making my way through the Star Trek stuff.
I feel like the idea that Kurtzman and Orsi are not involved with this is probably a plus, because I feel like they were those guys were like huge screenwriters in the, I don't know what period you would call that exactly, the aughts, the sort of like mid 2000s to 2015 range or something like that. They were involved in so many huge franchises around that time, and teamed up a lot with Abrams, and they have sort of like fallen out of favor in Hollywood largely. So I don't think they're going to be involved with this. So that's probably good news for Star Trek fans who are, like you, HT, maybe like looking for something a little different that still has the Abrams name attached to it. Peter, do you have any thoughts about any of this? Like, as somebody who obviously is not as immersed in Star Trek lore as Jacob and HT right now, do you, but I know you've seen all these movies, like what do you think about the idea of a new Trek film at this point?
I mean, I like Star Trek, and I like, for the most part, the Abrams verse. He was talking about a few years ago doing this father-son thing with Kirk, and I feel like that could have been very interesting. But
Is that the one where they were going to bring back Chris Hemsworth and have him and Chris Pine be in the same movie together?
Yeah, they were going to have to team up together in some kind of time travel, or I don't even know what would bring them together. Jacob maybe could Could guess better than I, but that sounded interesting. If they're going to continue, this universe with this cast of actors and characters, but I don't know. I don't know what else Abrams would want to do if it wasn't this. Like I feel like it has to be a continuation of this in some way. Am I wrong, Jacob?
No, I mean, I think that was a good pitch, and I have very mixed feelings on the Abrams movies, and someday HGM will cover this in great detail on our own podcast. But that first movie is terrific. It is so much fun. In the Darkness is garbage, and Beyond is good. But for me, it's clear that J.J. Abrams' heart was always with Star Wars, and you can see that in his Star Trek movies, the ones where he has his fingerprints on them. And he got his Star Wars now. So my whole thing is, JJ, you got your Star Wars. Leave Star Trek alone. Let somebody else to work on this. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe he'll be the executive producer, sort of godfathering it in production, let other people do it. But I just, if they are going to do a Star Trek movie, I will. You guys want to know what I want out of a Star Trek movie? If they're going to make one, nothing universe ending. That's been the issue with Star Trek Discovery. Every season is a threat to the entire known universe, as opposed to a mystery to be solved or like a smaller scale adventure. If you're gonna make a Star Trek movie, make it about a crew on a ship, or the stakes are that crew and their survival. I don't want another universe-altering, colossal, massive threat. Scale it down. Make a Star Trek movie for under $100 million and see what you can get. That's what I want out of Star Trek on the big screen.
I like that idea. And I think you might be onto something too, Jacob, because like J.J. Abrams recently signed that huge deal with Warner Media. So he's spending a lot of his time working on HBO Max stuff and WB projects and things like that. And Star Trek is still under the Paramount banner. So it seems like, if the signing of that deal is any indication, that maybe, that he'll be more attached sort of in name only, or just in a, sort of a shepherding position here, instead of, somebody who's like on the set every day, or dealing with, any sort of on the ground problems or things like that. So
I'll pitch this to HT and you guys, but HT, I want to hear, I think we'll appreciate this. Look, the Balance of Terror, an episode of original series where the entire episode is the Enterprise versus a Romulan ship, and the entire episode is one fight as these two outmaneuver each other. Take a Star Trek story, tell it in 100 minutes about a starship deep in space in a duel with a Klingon ship or a Romulan ship. Don't even have the camera leave the ship. Have it all told through portholes and view screens. Just keep it with the crew, and just tell a story of this dogfight or submarine battle, and the cost it amounts to the crew as they survive or don't survive it. I mean, that's the kind of small scale storytelling that Trek has done so well. And it's very, very clear that you could make another Star Trek 09 with a massive planet-destroying weapons, or you can have characters we give a crap about, and a story that's more affordable and a scale that is acceptable for, a Star Trek movie to be profitable these days. I don't know. HT, is that what you'd want out of a Star Trek movie too?
Yeah, that actually sounds like a nice relief from, the big, colossal, universe-altering things that we've been seeing so far. It doesn't have to always be big. And that's actually what I liked about Star Trek Beyond. Even though I'd not seen any Star Trek TV shows when I watched that movie, it felt like an episode of a TV series in a good way, in a way that it felt like just an adventure, another adventure in these characters' lives. And that's what I really liked about that movie. So if they continue with that tone and approach, then yes.
Very cool. All right. Well, you can hear HT and Jacob talk more about Star Trek and Doctor Who on their podcast, Trekking Through Time and Space. So check that out. They just launched a Patreon. So I'll put a link.
Did you bring this up just to help us plug our Patreon, Ben?
No, I was genuinely interested in what you guys wanted, or were thinking about this new Star Trek thing, and I just, throwing it in there for you guys.
I cannot encourage people. This is advertising. We can't do this, but patreon.com/trekking through time and space does not have a place being plugged here on Slash Film Daily.
Whatever you do not go to patreon.com/trekking through time and space. All right, I'll put a link to that in the show notes, and you can find more about all the stories that we mentioned on today's show at slashfilm.com and linked inside the show notes of this episode. Slash Film Daily is published every weekday, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features you can find on the site. You can subscribe to the show on Apple, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps, and send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns, and mailbag topics to us at peter@slashfilm.com. Make sure to leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention your email on the air. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts. It really does help us out a lot. Tell your friends, spread the word. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you tomorrow.